Welcome everyone to this discussion on nationalism. We're diving into its roots and how it's shaped our modern world.
Absolutely, it's fascinating. So, nationalism is basically the idea that a group of people with shared language, culture, history, or ethnicity should have their own sovereign state, right?
Yep, exactly. It's not just about borders, it's about identity. Nationalism has been at the heart of revolutions, border redefinitions, and even wars over the last few centuries.
That's powerful. It seems that before nationalism emerged, people were more loyal to monarchs, empires, or even religion, rather than an abstract national identity.
Right. Think about how the French Revolution flipped the script. It shifted the idea of legitimacy from kings to the people. It was a turning point, giving the idea that sovereignty belongs to the nation itself.
Yeah, and it didn't stop there. In the 19th century, movements in Germany and Italy accelerated the idea. Suddenly, disparate regions were uniting under one common cause.
Definitely. And it also played a role in disintegrating large empires like the Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires, where loyalty was splintered along ethnic or cultural lines.
Right, and that brings us to another interesting point. Nationalism has different forms. There's civic nationalism and ethnic nationalism.
Exactly. Civic nationalism is more about shared political values and, citizenship. Meanwhile, ethnic nationalism is defined by ancestry, language, and cultural heritage.
That's a crucial distinction. Civic nationalism tends to insist on equal rights and the idea of shared institutions, whereas ethnic nationalism can be more focused on preserving historical continuity.
Absolutely, and both seek legitimacy, but their outcomes can be vastly different. Civic nationalism can foster inclusion, while ethnic nationalism sometimes inherently risks excluding those who don't fit the mold.
Yeah, I see that. Right, and while nationalism can be a very liberating force, think of the anti-colonial movements in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, it has a darker side too, correct?
Yes, indeed. Nationalism, when defined narrowly, can clearly exclude minorities, suppress dissent, and even justify expansionist ambitions. The world wars, for example, were deeply tangled with aggressive nationalist ideologies.
I get that, but I do have a small critique. Sometimes people blur the line between healthy pride in one's country and nationalism that leads to division. Don't you think?
That's a fair point. There's a common mix-up. Nationalism is that doctrine about sovereignty and collective identity, whereas patriotism is more about personal pride. And the debate often gets muddled in modern discourse.
Exactly. It's crucial to ask, who are the people? Who gets to belong? And who decides that? Especially in multi-ethnic societies, these are not simple questions.
Right, and it becomes even more complex when you factor in globalization. Nationalism today is entangled in debates over immigration, sovereignty, and cultural identity in a rapidly globalizing world.
For sure. Economic nationalism has also come into the picture with trade restrictions, domestic industry protections, and all that, emphasizing national sovereignty economically.
Yes, and that's another layer. It's like nations are trying to protect their cultural and economic identities amidst global pressures. Meanwhile, supranational organizations, take the European Union, they challenge these old nationalist models by pooling sovereignty across multiple states.
True, the EU is a fascinating example. It shows us that while nationalist sentiment is strong, there's also a move towards blending sovereignties to solve big issues collectively.
Absolutely. And then there's the digital transformation, which adds another twist to nationalism. Online platforms now, amplify identity politics and connect diaspora communities across continents.
Right. Digital communication lets people, regardless of physical borders, rally around a shared identity. Some scholars even say that nationalism has seen a resurgence after decades of globalization.
Exactly. Others argue that nationalism was always there. It just adapted to new conditions. And that, in many ways, defines 21st century politics, the tension between nationalism and globalism.
It's really interesting when you compare the two. Nationalism, when it respects minority rights and democratic ideals, can coexist with pluralism. But when it veers towards exclusion, it becomes destabilizing.
Right, and that's the crux of it. Nationalism is not inherently good or bad. It's context dependent and really hinges on how it's defined and practiced in policy and society.
Yeah, it's like a double-edged sword. On one hand, it can empower people fighting for self-determination, which, after World War I and II, became a cornerstone in international law. On the other, it can lead to exclusion and conflict if taken to extremes.
Precisely. And in our current era, the questions we have: who defines the national community? What rights are afforded to minorities? And how we balance national interests with global cooperation are more pressing than ever.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of balance, the distinction between nationalism and patriotism is key. We need to appreciate our country's culture and achievements without letting that pride spiral into an exclusionary, combative nationalism.
Exactly so. Patriotism can be a healthy admiration for one's homeland, but nationalism, as a political doctrine, requires careful handling, especially if we're to foster societies that are inclusive and democratic.
And isn't it interesting how these ideas stretch into economic realms too? Economic nationalism, for example, shapes policies that many see today, a kind of protectionism aimed at preserving local industries in a global market.
Absolutely. And that ties into the broader question. In a world where global interdependence is critical, how do we find the sweet spot between embracing global cooperation and protecting national identity?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Balancing these forces is a real political tightrope walk.
It sure is. And as we see it in current debates over immigration and sovereignty, nationalism isn't a relic. It's a living, evolving ideology that continues to shape conflicts and conflicts resolution, whether through policy or popular sentiment.
Yep, and even digital spaces have their own flavor of it. It's almost like nationalism has fragmented into multiple punchlines, some unifying, others divisive.
Right, like, some believe that nationalism is protecting cultural continuity in an era of relentless global change, while others think it fuels division and polarization.
I'd say both sides have their point, but if we're to move forward, perhaps the key is to channel nationalist sentiments in a way that upholds democratic values without letting exclusion take root.
Exactly. Respect for minority rights, inclusivity, and a commitment to democratic principles can, hopefully, allow nationalism to coexist with globalization.
And that's why understanding nationalism is so important. It's not just about history, it's about what drives modern policy debates on sovereignty, migration, and even economic strategies.
Absolutely. As we wrap up our chat today, the takeaway is that nationalism, in all its complexity, remains as influential as ever, and navigating its challenges is essential to understanding our political landscape.
Yeah, totally. I'm looking forward to diving into the next chapter of political thought soon. Thanks for the engaging discussion on nationalism. It really gives us a lot to think about.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Let's keep questioning and exploring these ideas, because understanding them helps us really grasp the world we live in. See you next time.